In one of the most isolated communities on Earth, a way of life lost for centuries is slowly making a comeback. For the Rapa Nui people of Easter Island, much is at stake, but with their language and culture already under threat and their society in turmoil, it may be too late.
The mindset of the Rapa Nui people has undergone a dramatic change. There are deep divisions on this island.
Denied their land rights and political freedom, tensions between the Rapa Nui and the Chilean government have reached boiling point.
The state keeps its grip on this island through violent means, through weapons.
If they want to take me from here, they'll have to kill me. There is no other way.
Centuries ago in the remote South Pacific, Easter Island was on the brink of ecological collapse and the Rapa Nui faced extinction. Today, Chilean colonisers threaten to overwhelm the remaining indigenous inhabitants. But the Rapa Nui people are fighting back and tensions are rising. I'm Nick LAZAREDES. On this edition of 101 East, we look at the struggle for independence on Easter Island. With its astonishing archaeological heritage, Easter Island is one of the biggest open-air museums in the world. Its ancient Moai statues bear testament to a remarkable Polynesian culture that thrived for centuries in the remote South Pacific. While the Moai have endured, the descendants of those who built them face an increasingly precarious existence. And with time running out, a bold new generation of Rapa Nui activists are staking their claim for freedom.
My name is Moa Terueru. I serve as the guardian of this land.
Moa Terueru cares little for politics, but he is an ardent supporter of Rapa Nui independence and on a mission to rescue his people.
I couldn't care less about the opinions of outsiders who come here and tell the Rapa Nui how they should live their lives. People who come here and decree laws that I should follow.
Moa has set up camp just metres away from one of the island's most sacred sites.
I live my life according to the Moai, nothing else. I wear this loincloth so that I can feel the power of the wind. It enters into my body. It enters into my soul. I listen to the power of the ocean, and it speaks until the end of time.
Claiming to be guided by the spirits of his ancestors, Moa believes the Rapa Nui's only salvation is to return to the ways of old.
It's my vocation to come here and work, and dress like my forebears, to speak again the language of the Moai, so the whole world will understand the Rapa Nui.
Although the Rapa Nui people are exclusively Polynesian, they are governed almost 4,000 kilometres away in South America, the result of Chile's annexation of Easter Island in 1888. And more than a century on, the island remains tightly in the grip of the Chilean state.
From the standpoint of international law, Rapa Nui can't be seen as a Chilean colony of any type. On the contrary, it is part of the national territory of Chile.
Far from the island's only town of Hangaroa, the Moai of Tongariki, once scattered by a tsunami, have been restored to face the setting sun. Designated as a Chilean national park, Moa has reclaimed the site for his clan and is hoping others will follow suit by returning to their ancestral lands.
The people living in Hangaroa only care about how much money they can stuff into their pockets. Look at the loincloth of the ancient people. It has no pockets. It's clear, inside and outside. There's nowhere to hide anything.
For the Rapa Nui, contact with the outside world has been devastating. In 1862, Peruvian slave traders decimated the island's population. When a treaty of mutual friendship was signed with Chile, with no mention of sovereignty, the Chileans simply took over and turned the island into a giant sheep farm. Incensed, the Rapa Nui elected a new king who travelled to the mainland to protest, but he was poisoned the day after he arrived. On the island, the Chileans burned the Rapa Nui's crops and forced them into a concentration camp where many died of starvation. By the 1950s, the Rapa Nui were living under a harsh military regime.
When I was a kid, the Chilean Navy was in charge here, and we lived under their rules back then. No one dared look directly, like this, to a naval officer, because you'd be kicked, choked, or even killed.
After 125 years of Chilean rule, Easter Island's slow-burning fires of rebellion are being restoked.
My name is LEVIANTE ARAKI Tepano. It is my goal to unite the Rapa Nui people so our island can be independent once more.
As Easter Island's most outspoken advocate for independence, LEVIANTE ARAKI is a rebel with a cause. He's the president of the Rapa Nui Parliament, a group elected by the island's clans that Chile refuses to recognise. And he's one of the first islanders to challenge Chilean sovereignty by claiming his ancestral land rights.
I came to live here on the volcano because it's the land of my grandfathers. And ever since then, the Chilean government has tried to get me out of here because they've designated it as a national park.
LEVIANTE makes no secret of his deep resentment of the Chilean state, and he wants the world to take note.
I want the world to know that we are slaves on our own island, on our stolen land. We need the international community to help us, to force Chile from here.
But LEVIANTE's bold statements are brushed off by the Chilean government's commissioner on the island, LLANCAQUEO.
The truth is that although today independence is being demanded by certain groups, for the most part the community has always felt Chilean and proud to be part of the nation of Chile and have never been interested in either independence or decolonisation.
Until recently, Easter Island's remote location guaranteed it a measure of isolation from the outside world, but not anymore. Now, twice daily flights link Rapa Nui to the Chilean capital, as well as direct flights to Tahiti and Peru. The warm Polynesian greetings to passengers belie the tensions that the influx of outsiders creates. The demographics of the island are rapidly changing. The Rapa Nui are already outnumbered by mainland Chileans looking for a better life.
They come looking for work. They come to our jobs. They come after the tourist dollars. They want it all. They take everything that belongs to the Rapa Nui.
According to Leviante, the Rapa Nui continue to be duped. He claims fishing rights in Rapa Nui waters have been sold off in secret deals by the Chilean government. While its national park system rakes in tens of millions from tourists to the island. But there's little to show for it. With its abysmal roads, limited communications and constant electricity blackouts, the island's infrastructure is crumbling.
If Chile leaves, we'll be much better off. The Rapa Nui will have a better quality of life, because right now, I can tell you our standard of living is very low.
With nothing stopping the tide of immigrants from the mainland, in August 2009, Leviante decided upon an audacious move. He closed the island's airport.
I closed down the airport because it is my right as the owner of this land.
Taking the authorities by surprise, Rapa Nui activists drove straight onto the airport's runway.
Members of the parliament entered the airport and sat on the runway and gained immediate attention of the government. The Rapa Nui parliament closed the door on Chile. This land doesn't belong to Chile. We ask you to leave, and if you don't, we will expel you and close the airport.
Allowing government officials to land on the island for talks, Leviante ARAKI upped the ante.
We are reclaiming our territory and our land today. More than ever, we are taking this case worldwide. We want our territory and land back, and we want our proper government.
The demand for sovereignty was ignored, but when the government agreed to introduce immigration control measures, the protesters backed off. 3 years later, nothing has changed. And while the demands for independence have only grown louder, not all the Rapa Nui want to go it alone.
I will always fight against independence.
Why?
I don't agree with independence.
Tell me why.
Because the island does not have it does not have that autonomy, that real autonomy to support itself. The original way of tourism in Rapa Nui, when it began...
Easter Island's mayor, businessman PETERO EDMUNDS, believes full independence would prove disastrous for the Rapa Nui. Are you saying it would be a political mess, or are you saying that it would be an economic mess?
It will be both, a political and economical mess. We can't allow that today to happen.
But many on the island view Mayor PETERO and his big business ambitions as a ticking time bomb. Are you talking about some sort of collapse?
Yeah, and that collapse is induced by this unregulated immigration, induced by the unregulated business practice that exists on the island.
For almost 20 years, SANTI Hitorangi lived in the United States, pursuing justice for the Rapa Nui at international forums, including the United Nations. But with his family embroiled in a bitter land dispute with the Chilean government, he returned to the island, determined to reunite his divided people.
How can we move it forward? How can we work together in stopping this fast-moving development of the island without any regard for its ecology, for its environment, for its people, for its traditional knowledge, and for the culture that exists here and has existed long, long before Chile was a state.
SANTI Hitorangi says his family's troubles began decades ago when he claims Chilean authorities tricked his grandmother into giving away land to make way for an international hotel.
The transaction was done through my grandmother. My grandfather wasn't alive anymore at that point, and so my grandmother didn't know how to read or write or speak Spanish to sign a contract. So
she was swindled.
Swindled into a lease that became a title for a private owner in 1980.
The Hitorangi land was bought by one of Chile's most powerful industrialists, the Schiess family, who constructed a $50 million hotel on the site. A tiny corner block remained vacant, but when Santi reclaimed it on behalf of his clan, he was charged with trespass and hauled into court. An ordeal he blames on Mayor PETERO EDMUNDS, who has business interests in the hotel.
His economic ties to the Schiess family overrides any reason, overrides any thought for what Rapa Nui is and the right of us, the native, to claim the land as true owners of this land.
How will you reach out to the Hitorangi clan? How will you resolve the differences that they have with others on the island?
Well,
Is it possible?
No, no longer possible.
It's the pace of change on Easter Island that's caught many by surprise. This was the scene at the island's Anakina beach in 2003. 10 years on, the impact is clear. The graceful Moai that once dominated over Anakina have given way to hordes of mostly Chilean holidaymakers, unaware that in the hills above them, another fierce struggle over ancestral land rights is taking place.
The Rapa Nui are selling themselves out, and they don't even realise it. If there are too many houses here, it won't be Anakena anymore. It will be like Miami or some island in the Caribbean.
When KIHI Hitorangi decided to follow the lead of others in his clan by returning to where his ancestors once lived, he soon found himself pitted against big business interests backed by the Chilean government.
All those trees down there were planted by me. Now people want to come here and build 6-star hotels, right here, where I am. That's what they're planning. The local police, the federal police, the national parks people, the mayor, they all arrived here to kick me out.
In recent months, the authorities have stepped up the pressure on KIHI to leave, and he's warned of dire consequences if they try to force him out.
I am not going to leave here. I won't let them take my house. If they want to take me from here, they'll have to kill me. There is no other way. If a court order is issued, I will burn my house before they drag me away.
Traditionally, in Rapanui culture, there is no concept of buying and selling land, and the introduction of deeds and titles by the Chilean government has led to violent confrontations, and the issue could prove to be the tipping point for the Rapanui struggle. Fed up with the Chilean government's failure to address indigenous land rights, in 2010, many of the island's clans began staking out land claims and occupying government buildings in the middle of Hangaroa. As the protest camps grew, hundreds of Special Forces police were flown in from the mainland, and a showdown was looming. When the police made their move to evict the occupants, the fuse was lit. Angered, some protesters attacked the police with sticks and stones, unleashing a violent response.
They were shooting at young people, at elderly people. I went towards them to stop them, pleading with them to stop shooting the Rapa Nui, and then they shot me. They didn't recognize me as a person, but as an animal. So they shot me and I fell. I fell right there.
Running towards the police, LEVIANTE ARAKI was met with a hail of rubber bullets.
Shot me in the abdomen there, where my kidneys are. Look here on my arm. There were 8 shots. In the middle of my spine too. I have a scar right there.
Hey! Bota el arma! Bota el arma! Bótalo!
Le disparaste en el ojo.
KIHI Hitorangi was also present as the violence flared and says he was brutally assaulted.
They pushed me onto the ground, then held my head up and began kicking my head, then hitting my back with a truncheon until I went limp. Then they started beating me on the soles of my feet. Then they kicked me directly in the face and blood was pouring out of my nose and mouth. And my face was swollen. Then afterwards, the police, they all lied, claiming that I'd just fallen over.
But the Chilean government makes no apologies for its response.
Administrativas y también judiciales.
Administrative and internal police investigations were launched to determine if there was any excessive use of force. And the truth is that there was no evidence of that. On the contrary, the use of force was deemed as entirely appropriate.
Do you think the Interior Ministry went too far by firing on people?
In my opinion, the Ministry of Interior went too far. They made a mistake.
That mistake may cost the Chileans dearly. Their use of force to bring the Rapanui to heel has brought international attention and condemnation, raising the profile of a conflict that's long been ignored. But here in the Chilean capital, Santiago, the political struggle of the Rapanui is rarely discussed. As far as the Chilean government is concerned, decolonisation is not an issue. Easter Island is considered part of the Chilean state, and on that question, dissent will not be tolerated. But if independence activists get their way, Chile's territorial claim on Easter Island will be fought out in its own courts.
We hope to overturn the law and annul the treaty, the annexation of 1888, and return the land to us because Chile cheated us. It was Chile who sold our land, the Chilean state.
Every year in the crater of Rapanui, where the giant Moai were carved from the rock, islanders watch on as Rapanui's clans compete in a triathlon-style event that's been held in one form or another for centuries. For this year's winner, his sense of pride was palpable.
Everyone must know that the Rapa Nui culture is not going to die. Will continue forever. We preserve our culture through this event, and we do this for everyone so that they can come and learn our culture, which is a happy culture. I don't know of how to describe it. It's very emotional.
Having kept up their civilization for more than a millennia, many Easter Islanders are confident that an independent Rapanui homeland will eventually become reality. But they have no illusions about what lies ahead.
I have no doubt that these shameless people will repeat the bloodshed. I saw for myself on the TV, President Pineda declaring that no matter what region of Chile revolts, he will send special forces to shoot them.
As Easter Island's militant rebels dig in for a fight, Moa continues his spiritual quest, guarding his clan's sacred Moai and searching for a deeper solution to the Rapanui's woes.
Respect. Respect. Respect is the most important rule in life. If you do not respect others, how can you live on this planet?